clicked on this video because you want to learn how to solo in the style of John Frusciante. I want to give a disclaimer really quickly. My playing is not exactly like John's. I believe every single guitar player has their own unique sound and how they play the guitar and how they hit the strings and what notes they use, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so take this with a grain of salt. I don't want to make this intro too long. Basically what I'm going to be going over today is just motifs that John likes to use live, licks that he likes to use, certain notes outside of some of the scales that we're going to talk about that he likes to use, and just get that really emotional, make his guitar cry kind of sound that we all know and love. I just want to say quickly that even if you're a beginner, you can get to his style of playing. Don't be discouraged, because when I was a beginner and trying to replicate that sound that I would hear him do live, not even just the tone, but the actual playing itself, that is more important than having all of the gear that specific guitar player uses. In this case, John, like if you have his entire stadium arcade pedal board and his cabinets and his amps and everything like that, but you don't know how he plays, like it won't translate, in my opinion. I find that what I'm going to be talking about today is 1,000 times more important than getting all of his gear. I will be going over my signal chain, guitar, pedal board, and everything like that today, just very briefly. I have an older video up on my channel where I go through my old pedal board and like just a few pedals and just settings and whatnot and the type of guitar I'm using. But I'm going to be doing an updated one because my pedal board's changed. You'll see it today in this video, but I'm not going to go too into depth with that because it's going to get really long. Hopefully that the things I say and teach in this video come across well. It's my first time making content kind of like this and teaching guitar. Without further ado, I'm going to switch over to a different angle with my guitar and pedal board and we'll get right into it. So before I go into my first kind of topic and main thing about this video, I'm going to probably touch on 3 or 4 things, but the first thing I want to run through is my pedal board and just quickly how things are set up before I get into anything. I'm going my Strat into the DS2, the SD1 Super Overdrive, into the V3 Ibanez wah, into a flanger that I have set up for course, into the Marshall jackhammer that's giving me that crunchy kind of John tone lick. And then into delay, just a digital delay pedal that I have. And then the Hall of Fame for reverb, the Hall of Fame 2. So that's running into my interface here that goes right into GarageBand. That's how I get all my tones. I'll have some photos up here for all my settings or whatnot, but I have another video on my channel if you want, go back and watch that. Yeah, that video's a little bit older. This stuff's more updated now, so the sound might be slightly different. With that being said, I'm going to jump right into it. First thing, the thing that I think is the most important is the scale that John tends to use often from what I've seen in their live performances, and now seeing them live 3 times. I kind of watched John, obviously, almost the entire concert. What you need to do is learn the pentatonic scale. This is based off my experience. I've been playing for almost 5 years, and about a year and a half in, I got really into the Chili Peppers, learning all their stuff, the discography, John's solo stuff, like all live performances, and I tend to find that he always uses the pentatonic. There's a few notes that he uses outside of it. Obviously he's not in a cage where he just uses that all the time, but he uses that very often. I don't want to sit here and explain what the pentatonic scale is, and you know, you can do your own research about that and practice it and build up, maybe come back after and learn the second step once you're comfortable with the pentatonic. He obviously doesn't just play a scale like, right? He makes it very musical, and he puts extra notes in there that make it very emotional. So that's the first thing I would do, is learn the pentatonic scale. So yeah, the most important thing, learn that scale. You'll notice that a lot of the live stuff, or even like for Charlie, for example, it's got a note outside the pentatonic scale, but you'll see a lot of his riffs and live stuff and soloing is all, even his famous like Slane Castle kind of thing, that intro is D minor pentatonic. So it's the main box. There's 5 of them, obviously, and they're the same notes repeated in different spots of the neck, but essentially it's just that box. That box there. There's one note that's outside of the scale that's in there, but you'll see what I mean. Okay, so after playing that, you can see that there's one note that's outside of the pentatonic if you know the scales at this point. He loves to use that note, and there's 2 other ones that are really, really, really used often. And then the second one would be the 11th. The 11th on the B. And then he also uses the 12th on the high E, if we're in D in this example. That would translate over to any key. So if we're in A now, 4th, you always drop one note when you're on the G string there. And then the next note you go up to the 7, 5, and then you can play the 6 on the B. And now if you go to the E, you can go, that's in the scale, out of the scale, and then you have that. So if you go, that's the scale that you would learn if you were to search up the scale on the internet. But John uses those 3 outlying notes that John uses all the time. So I'll do like a scar tissue outro solo kind of thing that he would do live, and I'll play within the scale, and then I'll add the 3 notes, and you'll see how much variety it adds. So it still sounds great, 100%. Like, he can make any scale sound good if you get to a point where you're at, like John. Anything sounds good. But when you add these notes outside, it just adds like emotion, and it's so hard to explain. But like, if there's one thing I would have to tell somebody in terms of how to solo like John, is to use those 3 notes, because he loves to do it and it sounds so much like him. So kind of got carried away, but that's one thing that I would 100% recommend you do, is learn those 3 notes and apply it. Put a backing track on, play with, even if it's not a Chili Pepper song, put any backing track. There's thousands on YouTube, millions on YouTube. Go and put one on and play the scale. Once you get comfortable enough with the scale that you're able to play it in a musical fashion, add those notes to it and you'll be golden. Even something like Californication, so I'll play it down here, it's an F sharp, and you'll see when I add those notes, you'll hear that it kind of sounds like him. Like, I don't know how well this is translating over camera, but like those 3 notes, for example, now if we were doing F sharp for like Californication, so like here's a normal scale. And then when you add those 3 notes, so you'll see what I mean. So you're gonna add the 1st fret on the G, you're gonna add the 3rd fret on the B, and the 4th fret on the high E. And so it doesn't sound good like that. It could, and it could in a certain sense, but it doesn't in that case. And it's the way you apply it, and that's just practice over and over and over, and listening to how he plays. It's not just sitting down and going like. It's not just that. You're gonna sound bad in the beginning. It's gonna sound weird if you're not used to playing a scale like this, or playing these notes, or playing this way. That's what I kind of mainly wanted to touch on in terms of Pentatonic Scale. I'm gonna go into like kind of licks and riffs that he does a lot often. And then probably after that, I want to touch on his use of the whammy bar and a wah pedal and more of his pedal stuff. If you're watching this video, there's a 99.999% chance that you've heard the Danny California solo. I mean, if you haven't, then go and listen to it. At the very end of the solo, you can hear that crazy wah kind of sound. But live, he does it a lot, like a lot, if you go watch a lot of live concerts. And so that's like the main lick that I would recommend somebody learn. All you need is a DS2 to do this, and a wah, an Ibanez wah. There's one, I forget the model of it, but there's a Vox wah that you're able to do it with, that a lot of people like. There's a ton of wahs, you can do your research. Anyways, I'm using the V3 and the Boss DS2, and I'll play the going into it, but you'll see what I mean. Like that lick is like him. Essentially, what you're gonna do, it's in D minor, so you can do it in any key. Like, you can do it in. You can do it in any key, pretty much, if you know what the lick is. So essentially, you're bending up on the 12th fret of the G, in this case, because we're in D minor. And that next part is on the B string, the 10th fret, and then a pull off from the 13th fret to the 10th fret. So you're not bringing that bend back down on the G string. You're just like leaving it. It's like choking out after. That's what you're doing. And John does it with his middle finger most of the time. It's like a. So kind of like that. I mean, the distortion when he does it with the wah kind of covers up any mistakes. So he's not picking it. It's not like a. It's not a clean thing, which you could do. He does sometimes. For example, like he does it sometimes on the hey solo. If you do it with the distortion and the wah, you can kind of learn to mute the top strings with this part of your hand. The high E kind of gets muted with like the fingers here underneath. It comes with time and practice, of course. I don't want to give lessons on each little thing. If you want me to, I could touch on that, but like I just kind of want to get through the main things here. Strumming rather than picking it. So instead of going like, it just gets very messy, but that's what gives that sound. So for example, clean, it's like a. It sounds brutal like that. Terrible. Wow, I just got crazy deja vu. If I add this distortion now, it still sounds decent, but the wah is what makes it, so. Now I'll add the wah. You can hear instantly when the wah comes on. And what I kind of do with my foot is it's not just pushing on it and leaving it down. I push on it, I take it back almost halfway. When it's back halfway, I slowly start pushing it forward again. You could hear it in the sweep of the wah that it's like slowly going to full tilt. He does it all the time, and I feel like that's his signature thing. Anyways, so to recap, we have the pentatonic scale, learn it. Then the 3 notes that are outside of the scale that he uses a lot, which in an A minor case scenario would be the 4th on the G, the 6th on the B, and the 7th on the high E. So it's kind of like this shape all the time. I don't know how well you can see that. Now I kind of want to talk about the bends that John does. Like, there's so much to cover when it comes to this, and I'm not prepared enough to do this video. I just kind of jumped into it. There's so much that he does. I'm just kind of talking about the main things that he does. His guitar is almost used, especially the Californication era, is like a violin. Like, everything's dimed on the DS2, and it's just up and down the fretboard. This is kind of the violin-y sound that I'm talking about. He does it a lot on Scar Tissue in that era, where the solos are very like melodic up and down with those notes that I'm using outside the pentatonic scale. So how do you do that? You learn and watch him play, and you learn those notes outside the pentatonic scale, and you put it into effect. Try and do a solo on just one string, like literally only use the G string. So that's a good example of practicing kind of what he would do on one string only. You can apply that to any key and any song and any backing track, and you'll pretty much learn it. Same thing with that lick. You can go on, play whatever you want. You can go from a solo on one string and go into that wah riff if you want when you do the... So You can do all that kind of stuff. Make it your own, but these are just main topics that I want to show you that you can implement into your playing that will make you sound more like John. Third would be the bends that he does. It'll be like the final one. And then I also want to talk about his usage of the wah and a whammy bar. Let's say we're playing the pre-chorus for Scar Tissue, or the pre-solo, sorry, in Scar Tissue. He starts his solos in all different kinds of ways, but he loved to use bends, for example. Strip My Mind, Wet Sand, Hey, like a bunch of different solos. Like, they all go right into bends. And Hey does it, but like with a wah clean. So he does it a lot. So you get the point. You can do it on the G string, D string, B string, and the E string. You can go. Now, just 2 tips quickly. Yeah, his use of the whammy bar, tremolo bar, whatever you want to call it, and a wah. He'll use the wah a lot. Like, you'll notice he does it a lot. He'll kick it on whatever he wants. So that's just a tip. I can't really like give you what he does with his feet when he's using it because I have no idea. But if you listen to songs and watch him live, you'll see kind of how he likes to use it. For example, how I was using it for the Danny California or lick at the end of the solo, sorry. That would be an example of how he would use it. But using the wah, I don't want to get into delay and reverb and chorus because he doesn't use it too often. He probably uses chorus more than anything. He has natural reverb from his stadiums that he's playing, so he doesn't really need it. He uses it in studio, obviously you can hear it. And then his whammy bar. He uses it a lot. He doesn't do anything specific where he's like tapping and going down or like bending and doing like sliding bends. He's not very much like Van Halen-y whammy bar usage, but he uses it to drop notes and make it sound like his guitar's crying. And when you implement that with the wah is when you get very emotional kind of stuff. So, for example. He doesn't really do that in the studio unless it was like a song like Eddie. He uses it a lot. Obviously, it was a tribute to Van Halen, so that's why. The end of, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2006, Alcatraz in Italy, in Milan. After everybody walks off, and he's using it so much that it breaks off. He throws it into the crowd. But this is the first kind of video that I've ever done like this. I've talked about my tone, but that's a little bit easier to go through because there's like a process and just going through my signal. This was kind of scattered. I had the thought of doing this and I just jumped right into it. I didn't plan much, so I'm going to try and cut this down while editing. And if you want me to touch on anything else in the future, like specific album tones or a certain show, all that kind of stuff, I do have a lot of knowledge about this stuff that I don't want to put in this video because it'll be way too long. So comment that below, or you can message me on my socials in the description and let me know your ideas and I can hopefully do them for you. I don't have much else to say. I'll do a quick recap, but that's pretty much the end of it. 1, learn your pentatonic scale. 2, learn those 3 notes outside the pentatonic scale. Now moving on to like the next portion, it was like the riffs and what he does with his actual hands. So that lick with the wah, you have sliding up and down on like one string or the usage of the whole neck. He doesn't just stay in a box. He makes the guitar cry and sound like a violin with that DS2. And then the third one would be big bends. like I showed in that part of the video. A lot of examples to be found on Stadium Arcadium, even Can't Stop has that. And then lastly, just 2 tips is using the wah and how you can kind of create that frantic, intense sound that he does when he is soloing. Put that with some reverb in the DS2 and you're golden. Like I said, at the end of solos, he loves to crank on that whammy bar. But yeah, if you're a beginner, start with the pentatonic scale. If you're just getting into it, those 3 notes. And then as you go, you can implement each of those things that I talk about slowly. I'm literally open to doing a bunch of different stuff about John. I'm super passionate about guitar playing, and they're my favorite band, the Chili's. So I'm super into all this stuff, and I'll see you in the next video. Really quick before I end the video, I just wanted to do an outro jam just to like show how you could put the things that I just kind of taught you in the video into actual action over a backing track that I found. I'll link it in the description, and yeah, I hope you enjoy.